Very warm welcome to you to this Primary and Community Care Genomics Research Workshop. I'm grateful to all the people who've been involved, who I'm going to talk about in a second. So I'm Phil Evans. I'm a GP, and it's good to see a number of colleagues, GP colleagues, here in this meeting. I'm also the National Specialty Lead for Primary Care within the CRN. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the CRN in a second. And I'm also the Cluster C lead. That won't mean much to most of you, but again, I'll explain a little bit about that. So I'm the Cluster C lead. I'm the National Specialty Lead for Primary Care. And this is a genomics workshop. And primary care and genomics are perhaps not necessarily the phrases that trip off the tongue together. And that's exactly why we're here. So I think I'm looking forward to a very exciting day. It's good to see a whole range of presentations. We've got some speakers speaking this morning about their own research and about the potential for research in primary care. Then we're going to have some speakers talking about case studies and how that can impact on us in primary care and the lessons that have been learnt. We're going to feel that through the whole of the day. And then there's ample opportunity after lunch to talk about the issues that are relevant to you and how you feel the CRN could go forward. But I just want to ask a bit of an existential question this early in the morning. Why are we here? Well, as I said, it's been an interesting journey. So I just want to give you a little bit of a background about why we're here, and then I'll tell you a little bit about the CRN. For those of you who perhaps don't know a little bit about it, I'll be talking a little bit about primary care research and how we're getting on as the Primary Care National Specialty Group. A little bit about genomics. This is all very big, broad stuff, big, broad brush stuff, and the potential for genetics research, genomics research, and then the way forward, which I will leave to you, of course, during the day. So it's a brave new world, isn't it, that we live in, really? I think this person could have discovered that they were a red-hair gene carrier without actually getting Facebook involved. But it's a brave new world. There's lots of terminology, lots of actually techniques, etc., genomic sort of information, literacy that may be alien to an awful lot of our colleagues in general practice. And this is where we're coming from. For lots of you, this will be your day-to-day work. So it's great to have you here. Of course, you will have seen recently, I'm sure, Chief Medical Officer's report on the generation genome, which does mention primary care in places. There are some mentions of primary care, particularly the college engagement. Imran, I think, gets a spot in the college engagement. So it's great to see primary care in there. But, of course, the majority of work is not going on, as we term it, in primary care. But it's a very important wave, if you like, to ride at the moment. So what have we done this far? Well, I'm grateful to Munir, and Munir is going to speak in a minute about the pharmacogenomics and StratMed network. Very grateful for the work they've done already with the CRN, and that's been excellent. They had a general meeting with the CRN last year, and then I was present at a primary care meeting which happened last year, at the end of last year, beginning of this year, I think, wasn't it? Which was an excellent meeting when some of the speakers who were presenting today actually gave an overview of their genomics research that they were doing in primary care. And then we decided, as you will find out in a minute, as Cluster C, we have an ETI, an emerging theme and innovation, emerging technology and innovation theme of genomics. And hence it's fallen to us within the CRN to just concentrate on the genomics initiative that's going on at the moment. And we decided, after a bit of discussion, because there's a lot of work going on, those of you who are in the CRM will know about the precision medicine work, the stratified medicine work, the genomics work that's going on. And really that was too big a plate to take on, really. So we decided, having been discussing with our colleagues in the StratMed roadmap workshop, work plan that was going on through the network, we decided we concentrate on our strengths, which, as you can see in a minute, are mainly in primary and community care. So we saw a niche for genomics in primary and community care. The work hasn't been done. We hadn't really thought about the implications of the genomics revolution for primary care, and that's why we're here today. There's a lot of background, as we saw the Sally Davis's report, and also Sir John Bell's Life Science Industrial Strategy, which again might come up during the day, promoting the UK and its close working with life sciences, and genomics is such an important part of that. So I'd just like to acknowledge that, and we've invited as many as we can today, and it's great to see stakeholders here from right across the whole gamut of people working in genomics. So we're grateful to the network for organising this, and Samunir and the work that he's done. The CRM, we're grateful. We've got colleagues here from the genetics NSG, so we have a genetics national specialty group within the CRN. And we've been liaising closely with them. As I said, there's a StratMed steering group that are working within the CRN, and there's the personalised medicine work that's going on. We're very grateful to Imran and the college for helping organise today as well, and you'll be hearing from Imran in a minute. And then the other key players in this whole ambitious plan that we have. Genomics England, of course, industry. We'll be talking this afternoon about how we prepare ourselves for industry work in primary care. The NHS and the IT leads, NHS Digital, the Health Education England, of course academia, and it's great to see a number of academics here talking about their studies. And of course other very important initiatives that a lot of GPs aren't aware of, the 100,000 Genome Project, etc. And of course, so important to have the patients at the centre of what we're doing. So we mustn't take our eye off the impact on patients, and that's absolutely critical for these initiatives in primary care. So I just want to talk a little bit about the CRN. I appreciate most of you will know about the CRN, but just if you bear with me, I'll just give you a little bit of background about what the CRN is all about. So of course we're researching in primary care, secondary care, tertiary care, and what I heard recently is called quaternary care, which was an interesting one on me. Part of the NIHR, of course, National Institute for Health Research, which is the research arm of the NHS. For those of you who work in the NHS, of course, you'll know this. A key role in the government strategy for health and wealth of the nation, as you'll know. And together we represent, I think we're right in saying, the most integrated health research system in the world. So if you're going to do genomics research, clearly the CRN is the place to do it. So that's the strap line, I think, for today. Genomics research, of course, crosses the whole bench-to-bedside gamut of work. You'll see this slide, which most of you will probably have seen before, but the Clinical Research Network fitting in red in the bottom. We're really talking today about work on the right-hand side of that. We're talking about implementation of genomics, the genomics revolution, but specifically about running research in genomics in primary care. Towards the right of that, right, a lot of you will be working, I'm sure, in some of the more left-hand side of this, but we're talking about operationalising and delivery of research and in primary care. So those of you will know the CRN workforce and the structure. We've got the consortium with the various universities and the acute and trusts who are part of the consortium. And then we're here in Cluster C, based in King's College in London, with our ETI, as I said, about genomics. And we have produced this work plan, which is a discussion document, which hopefully you've all had, which I think will give you an overview of where we're coming from, if you've had a chance to read that on the train, perhaps on the way up. So give you a feel for where we're coming from and perhaps underline some of the discussions that we're going to have in the day. So as you know, there are 15 clinical research networks. It's good to see a number of the primary care leads from the clinical research networks who are here, coordinated by the National Coordinating Centre, funding staff, as we say, in hospitals, universities and health and social care settings, and the 30 clinical specialties, of which I've just highlighted the two that are relevant for today. But of course, genomics research, of course, is going on across a vast number of these specialties, but clearly primary care, which is where I'm coming from, and of course the genetics specialty group is a very important part of the picture in terms of the CRN. So those of you who don't know your geography, those are the 15 CRNs that we work with in England. We do work with the devolved nations, and I think there may be one or two people here from the devolved nations. So it's very important that we work, particularly in a primary care setting, we work very closely with our colleagues in the devolved nations as well. As you know, the network is managed. It has a strict operational plans, and very much is its performance managed to its objectives. Just to give you a feel for those are the objectives that we work to, probably too many to take in, but that's the way that the network is configured. And we're all there about operationalising, and the most important thing, of course, is about delivery. So the network is about delivery of studies, And that's why the concentration today will very much be on how do we deliver studies, genomic studies that is, in a primary care setting. We're pleased to say, and I'll say some of these that relate to primary care in a minute, but we've done very well. So just to give you again a sort of broad brush picture, so we've got over 600,000 patients last year recruited into studies. It was, I think, the best year that we'd had so far, so that was very pleasing to us right across the country. We've got a large number of, as you can see, a large number of non-commercial studies, but also commercial studies. We have to try and keep that in our minds this afternoon when we're talking about our interactions with industry as well as our interaction with our academic partners, which is obviously the non-commercial bits. We're increasingly supporting an increasing number of studies. As you can see, around about 4,000 studies currently supported in the CRN. So this gives you a sort of picture of what's going on. And lastly, in terms of what we do, and it's helpful to, I think, just to concentrate our minds today, this is the study support service, from early contact with researchers or sponsors, early feedback to both of those, identification of sites, optimizing delivery. So we're going to be mainly talking today about optimizing delivery of studies, effective setup, but not forgetting all those really important parts of that virtuous circle. So how's primary care getting on in the CRN? Well, you'll expect me to extol the virtues of primary care. We were delighted earlier on this year to have our millionth patient recruited over the last 10 years into primary care. So those of you who haven't got a feel for primary care, we're recruiting about 100,000 patients a year into CRN studies. So it's a phenomenal achievement, and this is part of the PR that we produce for that, just to thank our colleagues in the practices and in other community settings who've been recruiting for our 1 in a million campaign. So we've got 1 million people have been recruited thus far. Those are studies actually led by primary care. There are more studies that we do in conjunction with a lot of the other supporting specialty groups. There's about 1,000 practices are with the Royal Colleges have registered and accredited with the Research Ready accreditation, which you may want to hear a little bit about later, perhaps. And we're very pleased that in the year that this was written, there were 42% of general practices had done CRN research. That's actually gone up this year to 48%. So a phenomenal achievement, in fact, that just under 1 in 2, or just under half of all the practices in England are doing CRN research. So again, that gives you a sort of scale issue, and a lot of these genomic studies will have to be run at scale. And clearly this is we can deliver because we've got a large number of patients and a large number of practices. And primary care, just one of the specialty groups, produces a quarter of the recruitment in that year of CRN recruitment. Now, again, we couldn't have you couldn't expect GP to stand up here and not extol the virtues of primary care. So why primary care? And this may come back, I'm sure, in some of the talks during the day. But as you know, the vast majority of patient contacts in the NHS are with primary care. Only a small minority of patients are referred, so each year end up in secondary care, tertiary care. And this phenomenal statistic, if you didn't know it, of round about 340 million consultations each year in England, which, as we know, is rising. So that's phenomenal GP consultations. And there are only 8,000 practices. So only 8,000 practices in England producing a vast number of consultations with patients. We, of course, and it will come up during the day, I'm sure, have high prevalence chronic conditions managed in general practice. For example, over 5 million people in England with diabetes. And that just compares, just for example, with, I think it's about 3 million people if you tot up the total number of people who have rare diseases. I think that's a bit of a funny summation, but there are about 3 million people in this country who have rare diseases, but they're dwarfed by just one disease that we're looking after in primary care. As you know, we have high-quality electronic records, and we're now sharing those records in much more detail with other organisations, for example, the CPRD, the Clinical Practice Research Database, and we can link data across sectors, which is important and will come up, I'm sure, this afternoon when we talk about the issues that are facing primary care. And as I said, we've got good buy-in from over 4,000 practices, currently, and we have incentivization, which again might be an issue that comes up during the day. So we can incentivize practices. So I'm sure other speakers will talk a little bit about this, but we're already doing some of the things that are inherent in genomics research. Stratification of risk mainly, not using genomic information, of course, but stratification is common in primary care. It might be something we might want to talk about. We already attempt to personalize medicine to some extent. We have excellent, in fact, world-leading quality of recording of phenotypic information. Could still be better, and I'm sure some of the speakers will say later, but it could be more detailed. But we have ability to take data, particularly in chronic disease, into research. One thing that GPs have always been very good at doing on their IT system is recording drugs. So work you're going to hear, I'm sure, during today about the pharmacogenomics and the importance of recording drugs. Well, it's one of the things that is recorded for every patient in every practice. And as I said, we've got this opportunity for big data to share across sectors and with academia, and we're already doing that. So lastly, I'm just sort of hypothesizing. I'm not an expert in genomics research. Done a bit of research earlier on in my career about family history recording, and you'll see that coming up a bit during today. But I'm understanding that there are several trends that are going to be paramount, I think, today. We're perhaps moving away from, in genomics research, particularly over the next, I don't know, short to medium term, moving from rare monogenic disease into more common, clearly polygenic disorders. I understand that's the way we're going to be moving forward. Clearly, primary care will be doing more screening for genomic disorders, and we'll hear a bit about that today as well. There'll be increasing stratification, as I was saying, and hopefully we'll be using big data in a much more effective way. And there will be large studies that need large cohorts. We've already shown in primary care we can recruit, we're going to hear later on today for the East London Genes Project, where they've got over 26,000 already into a study that's going to answer some really important questions, for example. So recruiting patients into large cohorts in primary care is possible. But I think there's lots of questions, and that's why we've convened this meeting to pull you all together and to talk a little bit more about where we go to in the future. At least that's what they say in Devon, you know, where we go to, where I come from. But I think very much that it's the day that I hope that sets the scene a little bit for the day. So we've seen the strengths of primary care. We've seen the future of possibly of primary care. Primary care, of course, is under strain at the moment. We can't have a meeting without acknowledging that primary care is under strain. But I think there's phenomenal potential for us. We know that there's the potential for genomics research going forward. And we very much look forward to the contribution that people are going to make during the day. So over to you, and thanks very much for listening. Thank you.